Hey guys, tonight we're going on a journey. A journey to the very edge of the known world, and maybe just maybe a little bit beyond it. We're going to gently close our eyes and imagine a darkness so profound, it swallows all light, a pressure so immense, it could crush mountains, and a silence so complete, it sings. In this deep, we're going to search for a ghost, a myth, a forgotten whisper from the edge of human history. Tonight, we're asking a simple, beautiful, and utterly terrifying question. What if the Kraken was real? And I have a simple, loving, and very blunt warning for you. In that world, you almost certainly wouldn't survive. But for now, here in the safety of your own space, we can dream about it together. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now tell me, where are you right now? What is the name of the place where you're listening, and what is the time there? Is it late? Is the world outside your window sleeping? Let the rhythm of my voice be your guide as we begin to sink down into the black, unblinking eye of the deep. The great ocean you see is humanity's oldest mystery and our last frontier. It's a vast, liquid cosmos on our own planet, and for millennia, it has spoken to us not in words, but in whispers of fear and awe. It has told us stories of things that wait just below the surface, in the spaces where light doesn't touch, and where the rules of our comfortable world simply don't apply. And of all the stories it has told, perhaps none is so enduring, so powerful, and so rooted in our collective imagination as that of the Kraken. A creature of impossible scale, a coiled leviathan with arms that could embrace a ship, and a mind that held the secrets of the deep. It is a myth, of course, a beautiful, haunting fiction. But like all good fictions, it was born from a very real, very human truth, our profound, primordial fear of the deep. This fear isn't a flaw. It's a form of wisdom and ancient warning passed down through generations. It tells us that we, with our fragile bodies and our terrestrial breath, are not meant for that world. It's a world defined not by our rules, but by the slow, inexorable march of entropy and the crushing weight of gravity. When we look out at the boundless sea, our minds, in their beautiful and flawed way, try to fill the blank canvas with something we can understand. This is a phenomenon that scientists and psychologists have given a name: pareidolia. It's the tendency for our brains to see meaningful patterns in random or ambiguous stimuli. It's why we see faces in the clouds, figures in the flames, and monsters in the churning foam of the sea. The Kraken, in this sense, is not a creature of the ocean. It is a creature of the human mind. It is our subconscious reaching into the darkness and pulling out a form to represent our deepest anxieties about the unknown. For a long time, the Kraken was little more than a whisper in a sailor's tale, a metaphor for the unpredictability and sheer terror of the open sea. But then, in the 19th and 20th centuries, something remarkable happened. The myth started to bleed into reality. Scientists began to discover and study the very real, very massive creatures that had likely inspired these ancient stories. We found creatures with arms the length of buses and eyes the size of dinner plates. We found the giant squid Architeuthis ducks, and its even more terrifying cousin, the colossal squid, Mesonychoteuthis hamiltoni. These are not myths. They are biological realities living in the deep, and they are enormous. The colossal squid in particular is a thing of nightmares and wonder. It has swiveling hooks on its tentacles, a beak that can shear through steel cable, and the largest eyes in the animal kingdom, evolved to absorb every last stray photon of light in the crushing blackness of its world. And yet even these incredible discoveries, these real-world monsters, don't quite satisfy the scale of the Kraken. The Kraken was always more than just a big squid. It was a force of nature, a living mountain, a titan. It was a symbol of the ultimate power of the deep, and a reminder that we were merely visitors on the surface. So our journey tonight isn't about the real squid we found. It's about the monster we haven't. It's about what it would take, what biological and physical realities would have to exist for a true Kraken to come into being. To begin this thought experiment, we must first release ourselves from the small, tidy notions of our surface world. We must let go of the idea that life must conform to the patterns we see on land. The deep ocean is not merely a different place, it is a different kind of existence, a world where time seems to slow, where the pressure is a constant, unyielding presence, and where evolution has painted with a very different brush. Think of the deep sea as a separate planet, one right here on our own world, with its own gravity, its own physics, and its own forms of life that we are only just beginning to catalog. We think we understand evolution, but the truth is, we have explored less than 5% of our oceans. What other strange and magnificent paths could life have taken in the other 95%? This raises an interesting and deeply philosophical question. Is the Kraken myth simply the residue of a forgotten encounter? A faint echo of a biological truth that we are yet to rediscover? Or is it something more, a biological possibility so vast that our minds created its image long before we had the tools to even look for it? To answer this, we must first dive into the very fabric of our oceans. We must look at the immense tectonic forces that shape the underwater world. We have this image of the ocean floor as a quiet, unchanging landscape, a kind of serene desert. But nothing could be further from the truth. The seabed is a dynamic, roiling tapestry of geological activity. It is a place of volcanic vents and hydrothermal chimneys where black smoke pours from the Earth's core, and life in its relentless and creative way finds a way to thrive without the sun. This is where the Kraken, if it were real, would be born. It would be a creature not of the surface, but of the abyss, its very being shaped by the same colossal forces that push continents apart and raise mountains from the deep. Imagine a world where the floor of the ocean is a great woven quilt of rock and life, shifting and tearing and healing itself, and the Kraken is simply a single enormous thread within that quilt. Its body, its very existence, would be a testament to the raw, unyielding power of that world. The next part of our journey, my friend, is to descend into that great weaving, to feel the silent rumbling of the earth beneath our imaginations, and to see if we can find a place there for our myth to finally become real. For it is only by understanding the true architects of the deep that we can begin to comprehend the creature that might have truly belonged to them. To begin to understand what kind of life a real Kraken would lead, we must first look at its home. We finished our last conversation by talking about the vast tectonic quilt of the ocean floor, and it is here in the slow, powerful movements of that quilt that the Kraken's world is truly born. Imagine the entire surface of the earth, the continents and the ocean floors alike, as a mosaic of immense interlocking puzzle pieces. These pieces aren't static. They are in constant deliberate motion, grinding against each other, pulling apart and colliding in a dance so slow and ancient that we can only measure its progress in millimeters per year. This is the realm of plate tectonics. The great mountain ranges we see on land are just one part of this story. Another, perhaps more dramatic part, is hidden in the deep. Down there, where these pieces of the Earth's crust pull apart, new rock is born, and with it, a landscape of unimaginable drama. These rifts in the ocean floor, known as mid-ocean ridges, are not simply cracks in the ground. They are the birth canals of the deep, a continuous mountain range that stretches for thousands of miles beneath the surface, longer than any mountain chain on land. Here, the molten heart of our planet bleeds up into the cold, silent water, and a world of extreme, beautiful chaos is born. The ocean floor, once thought to be a quiet desert, is, in fact, a place of constant volcanic creation. And in this fiery primordial nursery, life does not simply exist. It thrives in a way that defies all our conventional wisdom. For a long time, we believed that all life on Earth, from the smallest bacterium to the largest whale, was ultimately dependent on the sun. We are all, in a sense, children of the light, but at the bottom of the ocean, a different kind of magic happens. At these mid-ocean ridges, geothermally heated water, rich with minerals, spews from volcanic vents. These vents are often called black smokers. Because of the dark clouds of sulfide particles, they emit a kind of inverse underwater chimney. Here life has found a way to bypass the sun entirely. Instead of photosynthesis, which uses sunlight, these ecosystems rely on a process called chemosynthesis. It is a quiet, powerful alchemy where microorganisms use the chemical energy from the vent's emissions, sulfur, iron, methane, to produce organic matter. They are the primary producers of a world that has no need for the sun. Around these vents, a bizarre and vibrant ecosystem flourishes: giant tube worms with blood-red plumes, blind shrimp that navigate by sensing the heat of the water, and strange alien-looking fish that have never known light. The deep is a vast unlit canvas, and chemosynthesis is the paint that life uses to create its most spectacular and unexpected masterpieces. Imagine for a moment the Kraken in this world. It is a creature born not of the sun, but of the Earth's fiery core. Its ancestors perhaps were simple organisms that feasted on the chemical soup of these vents, their bodies growing, adapting, and expanding over eons. A creature of this scale would need to be a true master of this deep and complex world, navigating not by the moon or the sun, but by the subtle shifts in pressure, the silent hum of tectonic plates, and the chemical signatures of the water. The currents of the ocean, which we see as a simple flow on the surface, are in fact an intricate, three-dimensional river system of cold and warm water. They are the highways of the deep carving canyons and transporting nutrients across continents. A kraken would feel these currents not as an obstacle, but as a path, a map written in the movement of water itself, guiding it from one abyssal plane to another. It would know the difference between the slow, steady pull of the thermohaline circulation and the swift, sudden rush of a deep-sea turbidity current. Its very being would be a testament to a world governed by forces far older and more powerful than any we have yet fully comprehended. And what of the truly deepest parts of the ocean, the trenches we have explored so little of them? The Mariana Trench, for example, is a scar on the face of the Earth that reaches deeper than Mount Everest is high. The pressure down there is over 1,000 times that of the surface, a force so immense it would liquefy a human being instantly. But life exists there. Small, hardy organisms, and perhaps we can imagine creatures of a grander, more resilient scale. The existence of these trenches, of these hidden abyssal plains and geothermal oases, raises a powerful question that we have no answer for. The truth is, we don't really know how life in these environments truly began or what its full potential might be. Could these deep, unexplored realms be sanctuaries for life on a scale we cannot even fathom? Could the Kraken, in all its mythical grandeur, be the ultimate expression of a biological lineage that has been gestating in the fiery heart of our world for billions of years, waiting for us to finally turn our attention away from the surface and towards the darkness below? To think of the Kraken is to think not just of a creature, but of an ecosystem. It would be a creature in constant fluid dialogue with its environment. Its body would have to be an engine of incredible efficiency, capable of generating immense power while also being able to withstand the unyielding forces of its home. It would have to be more than just a big squid. It would be a biological miracle, a testament to what is possible when life is forged in a crucible of immense pressure and total darkness. And so our next step must be to move from the environment to the creature itself. We must leave the rumbling, slow-motion world of plate tectonics and begin to ponder the biology of a leviathan. What would its body be made of? How would it breathe, see, and move? We must ask what kind of biological requirements a creature of this scale would demand, and how it would bend the rules of evolution to its will. Not merely to survive, but to dominate a world that is so completely alien to our own. We left our journey standing on the edge of a new question. What kind of a body could possibly belong to a creature forged in the deep? If the Kraken were real, it wouldn't be just a bigger version of a squid we know. It would be a complete reimagining of life, a biological paradox born from the immense pressure and chilling cold of the abyss. To imagine it, we have to let go of the cozy assumptions we hold about land animals, and even those of the sunlit sea. A Kraken would not be a mere animal. It would be a living, breathing biological machine, a masterpiece of evolutionary engineering, designed for a world we can barely comprehend. First, let's consider the immense pressure. In the deepest parts of the ocean, the weight of the water above is a constant crushing force. For a Kraken to exist down there, its body could not be filled with air, or it would be instantly and catastrophically imploded. It would have to have a physiology built from the ground up to deal with this reality. Many deep-sea fish, for example, have gelatinous bodies with high water content, which allows them to maintain a stable form under pressure. They don't have the rigid gas-filled swim bladders of their shallow water cousins. This principle, the quiet yielding to an unyielding force, would have to be the Kraken's first and most essential adaptation. Its body, therefore, would be a magnificent, soft, and flexible mass, its internal structures and organs seamlessly integrated into a fluid whole, almost like a living, self-healing submarine. It wouldn't so much resist the pressure as it would become a part of it, its tissues and cells perfectly tuned to the gravitational symphony of the deep. This leads us to a fascinating biological concept known as deep-sea gigantism. In the shallow seas, the warmth and abundant food allow many creatures to grow large. But in the deep, a strange thing happens. While most animals are smaller to conserve energy in a world of scarcity, some species grow to be enormous, far larger than their shallow water relatives. We see this in giant isopods, which look like oversized pillbugs, or in the colossal squid we spoke of. The reason for this isn't fully understood, but one theory is that the cold temperatures and the scarcity of food lead to slower metabolisms. With a slower metabolism, creatures can live longer, and as they live longer, they simply have more time to grow. It is a slow, patient path to immensity. But our Kraken would be different. It would need to be a true titan, a top predator. Its sheer size would require a tremendous amount of energy, and in the energy-poor abyss, this presents a monumental challenge. A Kraken would have to have a truly unique and incredibly efficient metabolic rate, one that allows it to generate explosive power for hunting without constantly needing to feed. It would be an apex predator in a world where food is a precious rarity. Perhaps it would have evolved a way to hibernate for long periods, slowing its heart rate to a near standstill as it waits in the darkness for its prey to approach. It would be a creature of stillness and patience, punctuated by moments of unimaginable violent speed. Consider for a moment the kind of heart and circulatory system this creature would need. A human heart is a magnificent machine, but it is built for a world of gravity and air. The Kraken would require a pump of epic proportions, a biological engine that could push blood through its colossal body, perhaps with a series of smaller auxiliary hearts in its tentacles to maintain circulation in the extremities. It would be a silent, slow-beating drum, a rhythm that echoes the geologic pulse of the ocean floor we spoke of before. And its blood wouldn't be red like ours. It might be blue or clear or something else entirely. Perhaps it would be copper-based, like that of the real colossal squid, a choice made by evolution to increase the oxygen carrying capacity in a cold, low-oxygen world. And what about its sheer mass A creature? That large would need to be able to move with grace and power. A giant squid uses jet propulsion expelling water from a siphon to move backward at great speeds. A Kraken of mythical size would be able to generate a thrust so powerful it could create a cavitation shockwave, a kind of silent sonic boom that would stun or kill its prey from a distance. Its tentacles, far from being just grappling hooks, would be instruments of incredible dexterity and power, able to move with the delicate precision of a surgeon and the crushing force of a tectonic plate. Each arm would be a thinking, independent entity, a kind of subbrain working in concert with the main mind, allowing it to manipulate objects, sense its surroundings, and hunt with a level of coordination that we, with our clumsy two arms, can only dream of. This brings us to one of the most fascinating questions about the Kraken. How could a creature this large possibly get enough to eat in a world so sparse? Could a Kraken be a biological paradox, a violation of the unspoken rules of the deep? The energy required to sustain a body of that size would seem to be a cosmic impossibility. Perhaps it does not eat in the way we understand it. Perhaps it has found a way to use the chemical energy from the hydrothermal vents we discussed in our last journey, not just for its own food, but as a kind of fuel source, a cosmic battery that allows it to sustain its immense form. Or maybe its metabolism is so incredibly slow that it can survive for decades on a single massive meal, a kind of patient, deep-sea slumber that we simply don't have the perspective to observe. We have seen that life can find a way to make the impossible possible, and the Kraken would be the ultimate proof of this, a silent, monumental defiance of the logical limits of biology. It would be a ghost made of muscle and purpose, a shadow cast by the laws of physics themselves. As our gentle descent continues, we move our focus from the internal wonders of this magnificent creature to its external form. What would it look like? What color would it be in a world of no light? How would it move, and how would it see the Kraken's biology? We can imagine as a masterpiece of adaptation, but its appearance would be a terrifying and beautiful reflection of the silent world it inhabits. It would be a shadow among shadows, a hunter born of the darkness itself, and it is to that darkness that we must now turn our attention. We have felt the Kraken's imagined heart, a slow and patient drumbeat in the abyss. We've considered its body as a living submarine built not to fight the pressure, but to embrace it. Now, as our gentle descent continues, we must ask a different kind of question. How would this magnificent shadow actually look and behave in its world? In the profound darkness of the deep, a creature's appearance is not about color or form as we understand it, but about the control of light and the mastery of a very different kind of stealth. The Kraken would be a shadow in the abyss, a hunter woven from the very fabric of the darkness itself, and its most potent weapon would be a kind of quiet glowing magic that we call bioluminescence. Bioluminescence is the production and emission of light by a living organism. On land, it's a beautiful curiosity found in fireflies and glowworms, a gentle flicker of life in the night. But in the deep ocean, it is a language, a tool, and a weapon. It is the sun in a world without a sun. Many deep-sea creatures use it to communicate, to find mates, and most fascinatingly, to hunt. The anglerfish, for instance, has a glowing lure at the end of a long spine, a beautiful and deceitful light that draws curious prey directly into the gaping silent maw of its teeth. The Kraken, we can imagine, would use this same principle, but on a grand, terrifying scale. Its tentacles, each one a thinking extension of its main body, could have patterns of photophores, tiny organs that produce light. These lights could flash and shimmer, not as a beacon, but as a kind of hypnotic living art, creating illusions and mesmerizing its prey into a state of stunned surrender. But bioluminescence is not just for hunting. It is also for defense and for blending into the environment. Many deep-sea animals have a clever trick called counter-illumination. They have photophores on their undersides that produce a faint glow carefully matched to the faint ambient light coming down from the surface. When viewed from below, a predator looking up would not see a dark silhouette, but a creature that perfectly blends with the dim light above. It is a form of camouflage, not of color, but of light. Our Kraken, to be the ultimate shadow, would have mastered this art. Imagine a creature of such immense size, hanging silently in the water column, its underside, producing a soft, barely there glow, a perfect illusion of emptiness in a world of profound space. This would allow it to disappear completely, a living ghost of the deep, a paradox of being both enormous and invisible at the same time. And what about its own light? What color would it be? In the deep ocean, blue light travels the farthest. Red light is absorbed almost immediately, making red-colored creatures essentially invisible in the darkness. The Kraken's bioluminescence, therefore, would likely be a beautiful ethereal blue-green, a color that would shimmer and fade in the silent water, and it would be able to control not just the brightness, but the very patterns of its light. It would be a painter in the darkness, able to conjure fleeting images of other creatures, or to create a dazzling, disorienting display that would blind and confuse its prey. The vampire squid, for instance, a small, elegant cephalopod, has a truly bizarre and wonderful defense mechanism. When threatened, it doesn't release a cloud of ink like its shallow water relatives. Instead, it expels a cloud of glowing bioluminescent mucus that hangs in the water like a ghostly, sparkling cloud. The Kraken, we can imagine, would have a similar, if not more spectacular defense. It could create a kind of living luminous fog, a swirling galaxy of light and confusion, and then slip away into the dark, leaving its predators to chase a beautiful lie. This brings us to a profound and deeply philosophical point. If the Kraken could control its own light, if it could use bioluminescence to hunt, to defend itself, and to communicate, what would it be saying? This raises a truly beautiful question. Is bioluminescence a kind of language that we can't possibly hope to translate? A language of flickering patterns and pulsating rhythms, a silent, glowing conversation in the darkness. We have come to assume that a language must be made of words of sounds that we can hear and understand, but perhaps in the deep, a different kind of poetry exists. A language of light and shadow, of colors that shimmer and fade, a conversation carried on in the hushed tones of the abyss. The Kraken in this sense would not just be a hunter, but a storyteller, a poet, and a living, breathing work of art, painting its intentions and its identity on the canvas of the eternal night. It would be a kind of a non-human intelligence that communicates not through sound, but through silent, glowing metaphors. And yet, in a world of total blackness, a world where the vastness of the ocean makes a flashlight's beam seem utterly pointless, light is not the only way to communicate. In fact, it is often a risky and attention-drawing choice. The deep is not a silent place. It is filled with the low hum of the planet, the subtle shudders of tectonic plates, and the movements of other creatures. In such a world, sound, or rather the vibration of water, becomes a far more reliable and far-reaching sense. The Kraken, as a creature of immense scale, would be a master of this silent oral world. It would feel the ocean not as a liquid, but as a medium for sound, a kind of living, vibrating tapestry. And it is to this other sense, the sense of sound and echo, that our journey must now turn its attention. For the true voice of the Kraken may not be one of light, but of silent, powerful whispers carried on the water itself. We have imagined the Kraken's physical form, a ghost of light and shadow, and considered how it would paint beautiful, silent illusions on the canvas of the abyss. But in a world where light is a luxury, and a risky one at that, communication and navigation would not rely on sight. The deep is a world of total sensory deprivation for us, but for a creature that lives there, it is a place of constant, subtle vibration. The water, so silent to our ears, is a medium far denser and more efficient for sound than the air we breathe. Sound travels nearly 5 times faster and much, much farther in water than it does on land. The Kraken, a creature of such titanic scale, would be a master of this silent oral world, and its movements and vocalizations would be a symphony and a weapon all in one. Imagine the deep ocean not as a quiet space, but as a vast resonant chamber. Every shudder of the tectonic plates, every deep sea current, every distant whale song, they are all part of a continuous living soundscape. Our Kraken, if it were real, would be a new kind of musician in this symphony. It wouldn't simply hear, it would feel. It would sense the world as a complex tapestry of vibrations, a kind of touch at a distance. Its massive body would be an instrument, and its movements would be a bass note, a profound low-frequency hum that travels for hundreds of miles, announcing its presence to the world without ever uttering a sound we could recognize as a voice. It would be a kind of living, breathing sonar system, a biological echo chamber that allows it to navigate the darkest canyons and find the most hidden prey. And this is where the science of deep-sea acoustics becomes truly fascinating. Deep in the ocean, there is a specific layer of water known as the SOFAR channel, which stands for sound fixing and ranging. At this depth, a unique combination of temperature and pressure creates a kind of sound duct where low-frequency sounds can travel for thousands of miles with very little loss of energy. It is a natural acoustic superhighway, a secret passage for sound that we have only recently discovered. For a kraken, this channel would be the internet of its world. It would be able to communicate with others of its kind, if there were any across entire ocean basins, a silent, powerful conversation carried on in the deepest of tones. We often think of whales and dolphins as the great communicators of the sea, and indeed their low-frequency calls can be heard for hundreds of miles. But the kraken, with a body of such immense mass, would likely be able to produce a sound so low, so deep, that we would barely register it as sound at all, but rather as a profound, unsettling shudder in the water itself. This brings us to one of the most enigmatic sounds ever recorded by human technology. In 1997, a hydrophone array in the Pacific Ocean picked up an ultra-low frequency sound, a powerful and strange noise that was dubbed the bloop. It was unlike any animal vocalization ever recorded, and it was loud enough to be detected across a distance of over 5,000 kilometers. To this day, its origin remains a mystery. Scientists have since concluded it was likely the sound of a large ice quake, a massive iceberg cracking and shifting. But for a fleeting magical moment, humanity listened to a sound that was truly unidentifiable, a sound that came from the deep, and our imaginations, in their beautiful and flawed way, reached for something larger, something more profound. We wondered if we had heard the voice of a creature so magnificent, it defied all our classifications. The kraken, we can imagine, would produce a sound similar to this, a noise so vast and so powerful that we would have a difficult time distinguishing it from the geological pulse of the planet itself. So let's imagine this: the kraken's voice isn't a roar or a cry. It's a kind of low-frequency infrasonic hum, a series of powerful clicks and thumps that are not just for communication, but for a kind of sensory mapping of its world. It would use these powerful pulses of sound to create a mental picture of its surroundings, a kind of magnificent echolocation on a scale that makes a dolphin's sonar seem like a child's toy. The low frequencies would pass through solid rock and water, allowing it to sense the shape of the canyons, the presence of a sunken submarine, or the movements of its prey from miles away. It would be a kind of living seismograph, feeling the slow, deliberate movements of the Earth itself as it hunts and navigates. This leads us to a fascinating and very real problem. If the kraken truly existed, and if its voice was a part of the Earth's natural hum, a powerful low-frequency sound that we have yet to truly classify, could it be that we've already heard it? Could its vocalizations be so powerful that they could be interpreted as natural seismic events, a living, breathing part of the planet's pulse? It is a quiet, beautiful mystery, one that makes us reconsider everything we've ever learned about the natural world. It asks us to question whether the sounds of our planet are simply the result of geology and physics, or if they are also the subtle, magnificent whispers of a creature so vast that its voice is literally part of the Earth's song. As we move from the physical form of the kraken to its voice, we must now ask about the mind that drives it all. What kind of intelligence would exist behind such a powerful body, such a complex set of senses, and such an ancient existence? The kraken's mind, if it were real, would have to be as alien and magnificent as its body, and it would be a mind shaped not by the stars, but by the crushing weight, the profound darkness, and the endless patience of the deep. It is to that mind a mind we can only speculate about, that our gentle journey will now take us. Our journey has taken us through the Kraken's imagined body and its silent, magnificent voice. We have stood in the shadow of a creature designed by pressure and darkness, and we've listened to the hum of its silent song. Now we must turn our attention to the final and perhaps most profound mystery of all the mind that would command such a being. What kind of consciousness, what kind of intelligence could possibly exist in a world so alien to our own? A Kraken's mind, if it were real, would not be a simple brain like ours, a compact command center tucked safely inside a bony skull. It would have to be something far more complex, far more ancient, and far more distributed. It would be a kind of living network, a magnificent web of thought and sensation that stretches across its entire colossal body. To begin to understand this, we need to look at its smaller, very real cousins. The octopus, for instance, is one of the most intelligent creatures in the sea. It can solve puzzles, learn by observation, and even recognize individual human faces. But what is truly remarkable about the octopus is the way its intelligence is structured. A large portion of its neurons aren't in its central brain at all, but are distributed throughout its arms. This is a concept we can call distributed intelligence. The octopus's arms are not simply appendages. They are thinking, feeling extensions of its mind, capable of tasting, touching, and making decisions on their own, even when detached from the main body for a short time. Imagine this then on the scale of a kraken. A kraken's tentacles would not just be tools for hunting. They would be independent centers of perception and memory, each one processing the silent vibrations of the water, the faintest chemical trails, and the shimmering patterns of bioluminescence. The kraken would be a kind of living library, with each of its arms holding a different volume of knowledge about its world. This leads us to a beautiful question. If the kraken's mind is a distributed network, then what does it mean to be self? Our consciousness feels centralized, a single narrative in our head. But for a kraken, consciousness might be a kind of consensus, a harmonious choir of its many thinking parts. It wouldn't experience the world through a single point of view, but through 100 different ones at once. The deep ocean, with its immense distances and profound stillness, would require a mind that is patient, thoughtful, and incredibly good at synthesizing vast amounts of sensory data. A kraken's memory might not be a simple recall of events, but a kind of deep genetic understanding of its world. A memory passed down not in stories, but in the very structure of its nervous system. It would be an ancient wisdom, a kind of inherited knowledge of the ocean's currents and the silent language of the deep. It would know the ebb and flow of the abyss, not because it learned it, but because it is a part of it. Consider for a moment the immense sensory input a kraken would receive. Its colossal eyes, adapted for a world of no light, would be magnificent light-gathering organs. But in the absence of light, they might be used to perceive other things. Perhaps they could see the subtle electrical fields created by other creatures, or the profound heat signatures of the hydrothermal vents we spoke of. Its skin, too, would be a massive sensory organ, a living seismograph that feels the planet's every shudder. Its mind would be an elegant, magnificent processor, a living supercomputer that takes all of this data and creates a beautiful, detailed, three-dimensional map of its world, a map that is constantly being updated and refined with every single vibration and every single flicker of light. Its intelligence would be one of integration and deep, patient understanding, not one of quick-fire problem-solving like our own. And what about the concept of time? We experience time as a relentless, forward-moving river. But for a kraken with its slow metabolism and immense lifespan, time might be something different entirely. It might experience time as a series of slow, deliberate cycles, as the long, patient seasons of the abyss. It might think in geological time, its mind attuned to the slow, magnificent dance of the tectonic plates. For a kraken, 1,000 years might be the equivalent of a human lifetime, a single deliberate breath in the history of the deep. This raises a truly profound question. If a creature's mind is so deeply tied to a sensory world we cannot perceive and to a temporal rhythm we cannot comprehend, is its consciousness even something we could recognize? Or is it a beautiful silent secret that will forever be locked away from us? We assume that intelligence must look and act like ours. It must solve problems, build tools, and communicate in a way we can understand. But the Kraken's mind would challenge all of these assumptions, forcing us to redefine what it means to be intelligent, to be conscious, and to be alive. As we ponder this alien and magnificent mind, a new thought gently pushes its way to the surface. It is one thing to imagine a creature in the dark, and quite another to try to observe it. Our very act of observation, our clumsy attempts to see and to understand, might change the thing we are looking at. We might not simply be passive observers in this deep-sea ballet. We might be a new kind of force, an interference, a signal in the silent world of the Kraken. It is to this paradoxical idea, the profound and challenging relationship between the observer and the observed, that our quiet journey must now turn. Our quiet journey has brought us to the very edge of the Kraken's magnificent and alien mind. We have contemplated an intelligence that is distributed, ancient, and patient. But now, we must turn a new page in our story and consider a profound paradox that lies at the heart of all discovery, the act of observation itself. We have imagined the Kraken in its world, a shadow that communicates with silent hums and paints with beautiful, fleeting light. But what happens when we, with our clumsy terrestrial tools, try to look at it? What happens when our own light, our own sound, and our own intent pierce the silent world it inhabits? The very act of looking, we can imagine, might change the thing we are trying to see. This is a beautiful and strange idea that comes from the heart of modern physics, from the mysterious world of the very small. In quantum mechanics, the very particles that make up our universe, electrons, photons, and so on, don't exist in a single fixed state. They exist in a cloud of possibilities until we measure them. The act of measuring or observing is what forces them to choose a single reality. We call this the observer effect. The most famous illustration of this is the double slit experiment. When you shoot tiny particles through a wall with two slits, they act like waves, creating an interference pattern on the other side. But if you try to watch which slit they go through, their behavior changes entirely. They stop acting like waves and start acting like particles going through one slit or the other. Our act of looking has changed their very nature. The particles, in a sense, know they are being watched. Now imagine this principle. This beautiful and spooky quantum whisper, writ large and applied to a creature as ancient and as alien as the Kraken. We have imagined a mind that is attuned to the subtlest vibrations, a mind that thinks in geological time, a mind that is part of the living tapestry of the deep. Our attempts to observe it, the piercing pings of our sonar, the floodlights of our submersibles, the silent presence of our cameras would not simply be a passive act. They would be a profound and catastrophic interruption. The Kraken, with its distributed intelligence and its magnificent sensory array, would feel our presence not as a faint signal, but as a jarring, discordant scream. Our searchlights would be a blind and terrible sun in a world of gentle, patient bioluminescence. Our sonar would be a violent, confusing cacophony in a world of quiet, low-frequency hums. So here is the paradox. In our search for the Kraken, we are not looking for a fixed, static creature. We are looking for a living idea, a ghost that only truly exists in the quiet spaces of the abyss. Our attempts to pin it down with our instruments would be like trying to catch a whisper with a shouted question. The very thing that would allow us to see it, our technology, would also be the thing that forces it to change its behavior, to retreat, to hide, or to simply cease to be in the form we are looking for. It would become a different kind of creature in the presence of our observation, a ghost in its own machine. This raises a deeply philosophical question. Could it be that the Kraken, as a creature of myth and legend, is a kind of quantum being. A magnificent biological paradox that exists in a kind of undetermined state, a cloud of possibilities in the uncharted waters of our planet, until a human mind, with its terrestrial biases and its clumsy tools, forces it into a single understandable reality. This makes us wonder if our search for the Kraken, our use of sonar and deep-sea cameras, is the very thing that prevents us from ever truly finding it. We have only ever seen the remnants of these creatures, the scars on whales, the body parts that have washed ashore, but never the creature itself in its full magnificent glory. Maybe in a beautiful poetic way, this is because the moment we look for it, it ceases to be the Kraken we have imagined. It becomes a different kind of reality, one shaped by the very presence of our looking. It becomes a shy, magnificent phantom, a ghost that is hunted not by spears, but by the light of our scientific curiosity. The truth is, we don't know. The deep ocean is still a canvas of unknowable potential, a vast, silent space where the rules of our comfortable world simply do not apply. And for a creature that has evolved in that space with a mind so alien and magnificent, our very presence might be a kind of intrusion that it simply cannot tolerate. It would be a creature that has learned to hide not just from predators, but from the probing, invasive gaze of a species that does not understand its world. It would be a predator that moves in the silent spaces between our sonar pings, a hunter that avoids the glare of our lights and lives in the quiet, undisturbed corners of the abyss. And it is to that, hunting to that silent, graceful, and terrifying dance of predator and prey that our journey will now turn, leaving the abstract world of physics and returning to the quiet, beautiful biology of the Kraken's life. We have left the strange, abstract world of the observer effect and returned to the quiet, magnificent reality of our creature. We have imagined its mind, its voice, and its biological secrets. Now, we must visualize it in its most powerful role, the hunter. In the deep ocean where food is scarce and every calorie is a treasure, hunting is not a violent frenzy. It is a slow, patient, and beautiful dance. The Kraken's silent dance of predation would be a masterpiece of grace and terror, a living demonstration of the intricate and delicate predator-prey dynamics that govern this hidden ecosystem. Imagine a deep-sea canyon, a place where the water is still and the pressure is a constant, unyielding presence. Here, the Kraken rests, a colossal shadow in the water column. Its body, built from the yielding flesh we spoke of, allows it to hang motionless, its immense form almost a part of the water itself. It does not need to swim in a frenzy. It is a master of patience. In this world of perpetual night, there is a constant, gentle rain from above. It is a slow, silent shower of organic material, dead plants, animal waste, and detritus that drifts down from the sunlit surface. We call this phenomenon marine snow. For many creatures in the deep, this is the primary source of food. They are quiet, patient filter feeders, waiting for this beautiful, nourishing blizzard to fall. The Kraken, we can imagine, is not a consumer of this snow, but it is a master of its movements. It would be able to sense the subtle currents that carry the snow, and it would know that where the food is, the prey will be. The hunting of the Kraken, therefore, would not be a chase. It would be an ambush, a silent, breathtaking surprise. Its hunting ground would be a place of quiet stillness, a perfect theater for its terrible grace. A Kraken might not seek out its prey. It might simply wait its colossal form, a kind of silent gravity in the water. A predator's hunting technique is often a direct response to its environment. The anglerfish uses a light to lure. The gulper eel, with its enormous mouth, simply waits for something to drift by. The Kraken, with its magnificent sensory array and its distributed intelligence, would have a strategy that is a kind of beautiful combination of all these things. Its bioluminescent patterns, its low-frequency hums. These are not just for communication. They are a kind of living bait. They are a kind of quiet, beautiful lie that it tells the deepest story of an empty space or harmless flicker of light, when in fact it is a magnificent predator waiting in the darkness. Its tentacles, each one a thinking independent extension of its will, would not simply be used for grabbing. They would be instruments of hunting. They could be used to create a kind of living underwater net, a gentle patient trap. The delicate cilia and suckers on its tentacles might have evolved to detect the faintest movements of a passing prey, a subtle shudder in the water that to us would be undetectable. The Kraken would feel its prey not see it. It would know its location, its speed, its intent, all from a silent distance. And when the moment of truth arrives, when the prey is close enough, there would be no sound, no thrashing, no frenzy. There would only be a sudden, impossible speed. A speed that in a creature of such size would seem to violate the very laws of physics. The immense power of its jet propulsion, which we talked about earlier, would allow it to move with a single magnificent burst, a silent, devastating strike that would leave no time for escape. This brings us to one of the central mysteries of the Kraken's existence. If it were a predator of such immense power, how would the ecosystem around it not simply collapse? We know that every predator is part of a complex and delicate web of life. A new titanic predator would be like a new star in a solar system, a gravitational force that would pull every other creature into its orbit. The Kraken would not simply be a predator. It would be a force of nature. It would be a living embodiment of the delicate balance of predator and prey in a world of scarcity. This raises a beautiful and terrifying question. Is the Kraken's existence a kind of silent law, a natural force that keeps the deep in a delicate, balanced state? Does it, with its patient, powerful hunting, prevent other deep-sea populations from growing too large, a kind of living ancient hand that maintains the quiet order of the abyss? We have a tendency to view predators as violent, chaotic forces, but in the deep predation is a form of quiet, beautiful poetry. A silent agreement between hunter and hunted, and the Kraken would be the ultimate poet of this unspoken language. And so, as we leave the silent hunting ground of our imagined Kraken, we must turn our attention to its place in the larger picture. It is one thing to imagine a single predator. It is another thing entirely to imagine a world that has been shaped by its very presence. The Kraken, in its full magnificent glory, would not simply hunt. It would define an entire unseen ecosystem. Its existence would create a cascade of effects, from the smallest bacteria that feed on its waste to the largest whales that would be forever changed by its presence. It is to this broader, more magnificent canvas of the deep that our gentle journey will now turn, leaving the quiet dance of the predator and exploring the unseen battle for the seas. We have imagined the Kraken as a silent hunter, a masterpiece of quiet terror and elegant patience. But a creature of this scale does not exist in a vacuum. It would be an anchor in a vast and intricate food web. Its presence, a gravitational force that shapes every other life form around it. To truly understand the Kraken, we must not just see it as a predator, but as a living piece of a magnificent unseen puzzle, a living embodiment of the delicate and unseen battle for the seas. The food web of the deep is not like the simple chain-like diagrams we drew in school. It is a dense, three-dimensional tapestry of life where every creature is connected to every other, and the removal or addition of even a single thread can cause the entire fabric to unravel. This is a concept known as a trophic cascade, and it is one of the most powerful and beautiful truths of ecology. A trophic cascade is a series of domino-like effects that ripple through an ecosystem when a top predator is removed or introduced. For a long time, we thought of predators as simply consumers, but we now know they are architects of their worlds. A famous example comes not from the ocean, but from the reintroduction of wolves into Yellowstone National Park. The wolves, as a top predator, changed the behavior of the deer and elk, which then allowed new plant life to flourish, which in turn stabilized the riverbanks and brought back birds, fish, and even beavers. The wolves didn't just eat. They redesigned the entire landscape. Now imagine this principle applied to the deep ocean, where a true Kraken exists. It would not simply be another predator. It would be the top predator, a keystone species that holds the entire ecosystem in a delicate balanced state. Its very presence would govern the populations of other large deep-sea creatures, keeping the colossal squid and the giant sleeper sharks in check. Its hunting so silent and deliberate would prevent a single species from dominating the abyss. Without a kraken, the deep might fall into a state of chaotic imbalance, a kind of unending war for survival. With it, there is order. There is a magnificent unspoken law that governs the lives and deaths of everything in its domain. The kraken's influence, however, would not stop at its prey. It would ripple through the entire food web, from the largest animals down to the smallest. Think of the immense waste a kraken's body would produce. In the energy-poor abyss, every piece of organic material is a treasure. The kraken's waste, its discarded skin, the remains of its prey. This would be a kind of slow, quiet rain of nutrients, a new kind of marine snow that would fall to the ocean floor and create new oases of life. A fascinating, if morbid, real-world parallel to this is the concept of a whale fall. When a whale dies and sinks to the deep, its body becomes an entire ecosystem, a feast that can sustain dozens of species for decades, a kind of living, breathing island of life in the middle of a vast empty plain. The kraken's existence would create similar, if not more frequent events, transforming the barren deep into a series of interconnected, nutrient-rich sanctuaries. And what about the surface world? We tend to think of the deep and the surface as two different planets, but in fact, they are connected by a constant, slow-motion ballet of life. Many of the fish that live in the twilight zone, the area just above the abyss, migrate up and down every day, following the food as it rises and falls. The kraken, a master of both worlds, would be a new kind of bridge between them. Its presence could change the behavior of these migrating species, causing them to move to different areas or to alter their daily rhythms to avoid this magnificent shadow. Its effects would not be contained in the deep. They would be felt all the way up to the surface and perhaps eventually even on land. This brings us to a profound and challenging question. We as humans tend to view ourselves as the masters of our domain, the ultimate apex predator. But the kraken's existence would challenge this very notion. It would be a creature of such power and such scale that it would redefine the very top of the food chain, a quiet, immense king of a world that we have only just begun to explore. Its presence would force us to question our own place in the grand scheme of things, to reconsider what we mean by dominion. Would the kraken's presence in the food web be a force of stability, or a beautiful, terrifying imbalance that is waiting to be found? The answer, perhaps, is both. It would be a force of stability for its own ecosystem, a perfect and powerful predator that maintains order in the deep. But for us, for humanity, its very existence would be a beautiful and terrible imbalance, a reminder that we are not the only or even the most powerful intelligence on our planet. As we finish our consideration of the kraken's role in the unseen battle for the seas, our journey now turns toward the surface and a very different kind of battle. It is the moment when the mythical and the real collide. What would happen when a human, a fragile creature of light and air, finally catches a glimpse of this magnificent shadow? What would it be like to come face to face with an intelligence so ancient, so alien, and so powerful? It is to that moment of silent, profound encounter, a moment of awe and terror, that our journey will now take us. We have traced the kraken's magnificent shadow from the tectonic quilt of its home to its role as a silent king of the abyss. We have imagined its mind, its voice, and its graceful, terrifying hunt. But all of this has been a quiet, contemplative journey, a beautiful fiction we have built in the darkness of our minds. Now it is time for a different kind of story, one that is not of the kraken's world, but of our own. What would happen when a human, a fragile creature of light and air, finally catches a glimpse of this magnificent shadow? What would be the silent, philosophical reality of first contact? It would not be a battle of guns and harpoons, but a profound and humbling battle of perspective. A moment of both awe and terror that we call the sublime. The sublime is a feeling that comes when we are confronted with something so vast, so powerful, and so overwhelming that it makes us feel utterly small and insignificant. It is the feeling of standing at the edge of a cliff, looking into an abyss, or of staring up at a sky full of stars. It is the quiet realization that the universe, and perhaps even our own planet, is so much larger than our comfortable human-sized reality. An encounter with the Kraken, if it were real, would be the ultimate experience of the sublime. We would not be meeting a simple animal. We would be meeting a living, breathing force of nature, a creature that is a part of the planet's pulse, a living embodiment of the vast unknown and powerful. Imagine for a moment a deep-sea submersible, a tiny bubble of metal and light descending into the eternal night. The pressure outside is an unyielding presence, the water so cold and so dark it seems to absorb all light. Inside, there is the quiet hum of the machinery, the nervous breathing of the crew. They are looking for something, a hint, a shadow, a whisper of the abyss. But what they find is something far more profound. It is not an attack. It is not a chase. It is a silent, gentle passing. The Kraken, a living mountain of fluid flesh, simply drifts by. Its immense form, a beautiful tapestry of soft skin and elegant arms, would move with a kind of slow, deliberate grace that would seem to defy its size. Its colossal eyes, adapted for a world of no light, would not see them. They would simply register their presence as a faint, distant hum, a low-frequency disturbance in the silent, magnificent concert of the deep. In that moment of encounter, all our myths and our metaphors would simply dissolve. The Kraken would not be a monster. It would be a reality. It would be a living, breathing proof that our imagination, for all its power, has barely scratched the surface of what is possible. In its presence, our terrestrial biases would be stripped away. We would be confronted with a different kind of intelligence, a different kind of life, a different kind of existence. Its silent, patient, and powerful nature would be a profound rebuke to our frantic, noisy, and self-important lives. It would be a moment of quiet humility, a feeling of being a small, curious child in the presence of an ancient, sleeping God. This is a concept we can call scale relativity, not in a physical sense, but in a psychological one. Our understanding of the universe, our place in it, is always relative to our own scale. A Kraken's presence would force us to see ourselves not as the masters of the planet, but as one small, fragile part of a much larger and much more mysterious story. And yet, despite the awe, there would also be terror. It would be a quiet, existential terror, not a fear of being eaten or crushed, but a fear of the unknown, a fear of a world that is so much larger than our own, a world that is so indifferent to our existence. This is a very real, very human feeling that has a scientific basis. The deep ocean, with its lack of sensory input, can induce a state of profound disorientation and anxiety. It is a place where our brains built for the sunlit world begin to struggle to create shadows and ghosts where there are none. The sight of a Kraken in this state would be a kind of terrifyingly beautiful anchor, a real-world monster, that would force us to confront our own fragility and our own limitations. This makes us wonder, if we were to ever look upon the Kraken, would we be seeing a monster, a magnificent animal, or a reflection of our own smallest, most terrified selves? The Kraken would not be a reflection of its world. It would be a reflection of ours. It would be a mirror in the dark, and what we saw in it would say more about us than it ever could about the creature itself. As our quiet journey into this philosophical moment comes to a close, a new question begins to form. We have imagined the Kraken as the ultimate apex predator of its ecosystem. But what if it were something more? What if it were a creature not of our evolutionary tree, but of a different one entirely? What if the Kraken's existence, so alien and magnificent, hinted at a different kind of origin story for life itself? A story that began not in the sunlit shallows, but in the fiery geothermal depths. It is to that magnificent, if speculative, question about the origins of life that our journey will now turn, leaving the philosophical questions of first contact behind and moving toward a new, more ancient, and far more beautiful mystery. We have looked upon the Kraken as a philosophical entity, a magnificent challenge to our own perspective and our place in the world. But now, as our gentle descent continues, we must turn to an even deeper mystery, one that goes all the way back to the very beginning of life itself. We have imagined the Kraken as the king of a hidden world. But what if its story began in a completely different way? What if its existence hinted at a different kind of origin? A parallel branch of life that has been evolving on our own planet for billions of years, right beneath our feet. This is a question that brings us to the most profound of scientific concepts of biogenesis, the process by which life arises from non-living matter. For a long time, the prevailing theory was that life on Earth began in a primordial soup of shallow sun-warmed waters. It was a beautiful and elegant idea, a kind of cosmic kitchen where energy from lightning and the sun mixed with simple organic molecules to create the first fragile spark of life. But as we began to explore the deep ocean, a different and equally compelling theory began to emerge, one that is far more relevant to our Kraken. We discovered a world of volcanic hydrothermal vents where life thrives without the sun in a chaotic and geothermal crucible. This led to a new hypothesis for biogenesis, that life may have begun not in the calm sunlit shallows, but in the fiery, chaotic embrace of the deep. Here, in the constant flow of mineral-rich, superheated water, the conditions were perfect for the complex chemistry required to form the building blocks of life. The Kraken, in this sense, could be the ultimate evidence of a second genesis. It is a creature so profoundly different from the life we see on the surface that it almost seems to belong to a separate, magnificent, evolutionary tree. The life that we know, the life that we are a part of, is based on the laws and the rhythms of the sun. But the Kraken and its ancient ancestors would be based on the laws and the rhythms of the Earth's fiery core. It would be a creature born not of light, but of heat and chemistry. Its very existence would be a kind of living, breathing proof that life in its relentless and creative way has not just one solution to the problem of existence, but many. The deep, with its stable, dark, and pressure-filled environment, could have been a perfect cradle for a completely independent form of life, to arise a life that has been evolving in its own magnificent, silent way for billions of years. Think for a moment of the extremophiles that live around these hydrothermal vents. These are not simply hardy creatures. They are creatures that thrive in environments that would be instantly lethal to us. Some can survive in temperatures of over 100 degrees Celsius. Others can live in water so acidic it would dissolve steel. They are living, breathing proof that life on Earth is far more resilient and far more diverse than we ever imagined. The Kraken, we can imagine, is the magnificent ultimate expression of this resilience. It would be a kind of living evolutionary masterpiece, a creature that has taken the profound and alien conditions of the deep and used them to create a body, a mind, and an existence so perfectly adapted that it is almost a different form of being entirely. Its DNA, its cellular structure, its very chemistry might be subtly but profoundly different from our own. This makes us question everything we know about life on our planet. We tend to think of life as a single connected tree, with all creatures sharing a common ancestor that began in the sunlit world. But what if this isn't the case? What if the deep, with its own unique genesis event, is a kind of second tree, a magnificent ancient tree of life that has been growing in the darkness all along? This raises a beautiful and terrifying question. Could the Kraken, a creature of such profound difference, be the ultimate evidence of a second genesis, a parallel branch of life that has been evolving on our own planet for billions of years, right beneath our feet? We have spent so much time looking out at the stars for evidence of alien life when perhaps a truly alien and magnificent form of life has been here all along, hiding in plain sight in the darkest, most unexplored corners of our own world. The Kraken in this sense is not just a myth or a predator. It is a profound philosophical statement, a living question about the nature of life itself. It asks us to reconsider our assumptions, to let go of our terrestrial biases, and to acknowledge that life in its endless and beautiful variety is far more creative and far more resilient than we have ever given it credit for. As we leave this ancient speculative mystery behind, we must now ask about the Kraken's place in this new reimagined world. If it is the king of a separate independent branch of life, how would it perceive its domain? How would it defend its territory? And how would its existence redefine our own maps of the ocean, the very boundaries of our understanding? It is to this quiet, powerful question about the Kraken's reign that our journey will now turn. Leaving the origins of life and moving toward the magnificent, silent dominion of the deep, we have imagined the Kraken as a creature of second genesis, a magnificent and ancient branch of life. We have contemplated its origins in the fiery embrace of the deeper world, remade by water and chemistry. Now, as our journey continues, we must move from its beginnings to its dominion. If the Kraken is indeed the ultimate expression of life in the abyss, what does it mean to be the king of a world with no boundaries, no landmarks, and no light? It is a question of territoriality, but on a scale so vast and so alien that it forces us to redefine the very concept of an empire. On land, territory is a two-dimensional concept. It is a plot of ground, a mountain range, a river that serves as a border. We mark our territories with fences, with flags, with lines on a map. But for the Kraken, a creature of a three-dimensional fluid world, its territory would be a volume of water, a vast, silent, and constantly shifting empire. It would not be a kingdom of land, but a kingdom of water, a magnificent, invisible sphere of influence that moves and breathes with the currents of the ocean. The Kraken would be its true master, its presence a silent, undeniable law that governs the behavior of every creature within its domain. Imagine the Kraken's home range as a kind of personal oceanic universe, a volume of water so vast it could encompass entire mountain ranges and deep-sea canyons. Its territory would not be defined by sight, but by sound, by chemical trails, and by the subtle vibrations of the water. Its low-frequency hum, the silent song we spoke of, would be a kind of living border, a powerful signal that tells every other creature that they have entered a domain of immense power. It would be a kind of magnificent slow-motion radar, a constant patient survey of its empire. For a smaller creature, for a deep-sea fish, or a colossal squid entering a Kraken's territory would be like entering a different country. The rules would be different. The dangers would be different. The very presence of the Kraken would create a kind of gravitational pull, a powerful force that would dictate their movements, their hunting patterns, and their very survival. We as humans have tried to map the ocean with lines and names. We have divided it into nations and territories, into international waters and exclusive economic zones. Our maps are beautiful, but they are a kind of human fiction, a two-dimensional grid imposed on a three-dimensional world. But the Kraken's existence would challenge the very basis of these maps. It would have a different kind of map, one that is not drawn on paper, but in its mind. Its map would be a living sensory atlas of the abyss, a masterpiece of memory and perception that is constantly being updated and refined. It would know the location of every hydrothermal vent, every deep-sea canyon, every slow-moving current that carries the marine snow. It would be a map of life, of chemistry, and of silent, powerful vibrations. This raises a profound question. If a Kraken's territory is a three-dimensional fluid volume of water, then what does it mean to be a map? Does its map exist in its mind, a living sensory atlas of the abyss? And is that a map we can never hope to truly read? we would have to let go of our comfortable two-dimensional notions of territory and begin to imagine a world where the borders are not lines, but feelings, not names, but silent, powerful presence. A fascinating example of this kind of territoriality can be seen in the real world with the vast migration patterns of some whales. A sperm whale, for example, can dive to incredible depths and travel across entire ocean basins, its magnificent body following a kind of invisible map of currents and sound. A kraken, we can imagine, would have a similar, if not more sophisticated understanding of its domain. Its territory would not be a fixed location. It would be a vast, constantly moving sphere of influence, a kind of living, breathing empire that follows the rhythms of the deep. It would be a creature that is a part of the ocean itself, its domain, a fluid extension of its own magnificent body. And in this empire, there would be an unspoken law, a rule of life and death, that is governed not by a king or a parliament, but by the quiet, undeniable will of a single, magnificent creature. As we finish our consideration of the Kraken's reign, a new question begins to form. We have spoken of the Kraken's long, patient existence and its slow, deliberate movements. But what does it mean for a creature to live in a world where time and space are experienced so differently, a world of immense pressure and profound distance? The Kraken, a master of its territory, would also be a master of these fundamental concepts, a living testament to a different kind of reality. It is to these deep philosophical questions about the nature of time and space in the abyss that our quiet journey will now turn, leaving the silent empire of the Kraken and moving toward a world of paradoxes and mysteries that are as vast and as ancient as the deep itself. We have left the Kraken's silent empire, and our quiet journey now takes us to the most fundamental and mysterious questions of all the nature of time and space themselves. We have imagined a creature that lives in a world of immense pressure and profound distance, and now we must ask what it means to be alive in such a place. The Kraken, in its slow, deliberate rhythm, would be a living biological paradox, a creature that exists in a kind of fluid reality that we, with our terrestrial biases, can barely begin to comprehend. To explore this, we must first turn to a beautiful and perplexing thought experiment from the world of physics, a concept from Einstein's theory of relativity, known as the twin paradox. Imagine two twins. One stays on Earth living a normal life. The other takes a magnificent journey in a spaceship that travels at near the speed of light. When the traveling twin returns to Earth, they will have aged far less than their sibling. For them, time has slowed down. This isn't science fiction. It is a profound and beautiful truth of our universe. Time is not a universal constant. It is a local reality, a river that flows at different rates depending on how fast you are moving. Now let's take this idea and apply it to our Kraken, but with a different kind of force. We have spoken of the immense pressure of the abyss, a force so powerful it can crush mountains. We have also spoken of the Kraken's incredibly slow metabolism, a biological rhythm that is attuned to the long, patient cycles of the deep. For the Kraken, time would not be measured in days and nights in the quick-fire pulse of a human heart. It would be measured in the slow, magnificent dance of tectonic plates, in the eons that it takes for a new hydrothermal vent to form, and in the decades that a single meal can sustain it. The Kraken, in its slow, deliberate existence, would be a kind of biological astronaut, a creature that experiences time at a different rate, a paradox not of speed, but of patience and pressure. For it, a human lifetime might be a fleeting flicker of light, a single hurried breath in the eternal darkness of its world. And what about space? We think of space as a static, empty backdrop for our lives. But in the abyss, space is a living, breathing, and dense entity. The immense pressure that we've discussed does not simply push down. It compresses the very molecules of water, making it a different kind of substance entirely. A fascinating and little-known scientific fact is that at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, the deepest point on Earth, a cubic meter of water is denser and weighs more than a cubic meter of water at the surface. The very fabric of the ocean The very nature of its space is different there. For the Kraken, a creature that is a part of this dense pressurized reality space would not be an empty void. It would be a kind of fluid living geometry. Its movements would not simply be a journey through a space. They would be a journey through a living, breathing entity, a magnificent, constantly shifting tapestry of pressure and density. This brings us to a profound and beautiful question. Could the Kraken, a creature that lives in a world of immense pressure and slow geological time, be a living biological proof of a different kind of temporal reality? Physicists still wonder if time itself is not a universal constant, but a kind of local reality, a slow, gentle river in the deep and a fast-rushing stream on the surface. The Kraken's existence would give us a new living lens through which to view this question. It would be a creature that has evolved in a world where time and space are not the same as they are for us, and its very being would be a kind of quiet, magnificent refutation of our terrestrial biases. We tend to think of life as a single universal experience, but the Kraken, in its patient, slow, and deep existence, would be a profound reminder that life, in its relentless and creative way, can find a way to live outside of our most cherished, most fundamental assumptions. The Kraken would not simply be a magnificent creature. It would be a living biological paradox, a testament to the strange and beautiful laws that govern our universe. It would be a creature that has a different relationship with time, a different relationship with space, and a different relationship with existence itself. It would be a ghost that lives in a different kind of now a magnificent shadow that has been a part of the planet's story for billions of years, while we have only been a part of it for a fleeting, hurried moment. As we leave this philosophical inquiry behind, we must turn our attention back to where we started the myth. The Kraken may be a magnificent scientific truth, but it began as a whisper in our minds, a shadow in our stories. It is to that beautiful, haunting relationship between myth and reality that our quiet journey will now turn, leaving the paradoxes of the abyss and moving toward the echoes in our collective unconscious. We have journeyed far. We have moved from a mythical whisper to a magnificent biological truth, from the surface of a sailor's tale to the fiery heart of the abyss. We have reimagined the Kraken not as a monster, but as a living, breathing paradox of time-space and life itself. But now, as our long, quiet journey begins its final arc, we must return to where we started. We must return to the myth, to the ancient whispers that first brought us here, and we must ask a final, profound question. What would be the psychological and cultural impact of the Kraken's reality? How would its existence, now a scientific fact, reshape our stories, our fears, and the very foundation of our collective unconscious? The collective unconscious is a powerful and beautiful idea from psychology. It suggests that all of humanity shares a kind of psychic blueprint, a deep-seated set of symbols, instincts, and fears that are inherited from our ancestors. In this unconscious mind, we all carry a memory of the hero, the sage, the trickster, and the shadow. The Kraken, in this sense, is not a simple myth. It is a powerful archetype, a shadow in our collective mind that represents our deepest fears of the unknown, of the vast, indifferent power of nature, and of the profound, crushing darkness of the deep. It is a symbol of everything that is a mystery to us, a placeholder for the things that we cannot name and cannot control. This is why in different cultures all over the world, with no contact with one another, similar myths of sea serpents, giant squid, and leviathans have emerged. It is not that they saw the same creature. It is that they felt the same fear, a primal inherited terror of the deep. An encounter with a real Kraken would therefore be more than a scientific discovery. It would be a profound and catastrophic change to our very psyche. For millennia, the Kraken was a beautiful fiction, a magnificent shadow that existed only in our stories. We could control it. We could write its ending. We could decide whether it was a monster or a god. But a real Kraken, a living, breathing biological fact, would be a new kind of challenge. it would be a truth that we cannot control. It would be a magnificent and terrifying reminder that our imagination, for all its power, has been a kind of gentle preface to a much larger and much more mysterious book. The discovery of the Kraken would force us to confront our own limitations, our own fragility, and our own profound smallness in the face of a creature that is so ancient, so patient, and so powerful, it seems to belong to a different kind of time. This brings us to a beautiful and haunting question. If we were to find the Kraken, would it be a victory for science or a kind of profound loss for the human soul? The truth is, we don't know for sure if the Kraken's existence would be a kind of final beautiful answer that fills in a blank space in our mythology, or a kind of loss, a moment when one of our most ancient and magnificent myths finally becomes a mundane biological fact. We have always needed our myths, our stories of monsters and gods, because they help us to understand our world. They give form to our formless fears, and they give meaning to the things that we cannot control. The Kraken as a myth was a kind of beautiful living metaphor for the ocean itself. It was the personification of the deep's silent power. But a real Kraken would be something else entirely. It would be a creature that has been living out its own magnificent story, a story that has no need for our metaphors, no need for our myths, and no need for our understanding. And yet perhaps the discovery of the Kraken would not be a loss, but a kind of rebirth. It would be a new beginning for our stories. The Kraken would not be the end of a myth. It would be the beginning of a new one, a myth of a creature that is so magnificent, so ancient, and so alien that it forces us to tell new kinds of stories, to sing new kinds of songs, and to write a new, more humble chapter in the human saga. Its existence would be a quiet, powerful echo that would reverberate through our collective unconscious for centuries to come, a magnificent and humbling truth that we would have to grapple with forever. It would be a reminder that the world is far more mysterious, far more beautiful, and far more terrifying than we have ever dared to imagine. It is a whisper from our ancestors that has finally become a living, breathing truth. And now, my friend, we have reached the end of our journey. We have traveled from myth to biology, from the quiet hum of the deep to the loud, chaotic world of human fear. We have watched a mythical monster transform into a living, breathing scientific paradox, a creature of such profound magnificence that it challenges everything we thought we knew. Our story is almost over, but before we say our goodbyes, there is one last piece of the journey left. It is a final quiet passage, a soft landing from the beautiful, terrible dream of the Kraken, and a gentle return to the quiet space where you are now preparing for the soft, beautiful embrace of sleep. My friend, we have traveled far together. We have sunk from the sunlit world into the eternal night of the abyss, and in that magnificent darkness, we have found a truth far more profound and beautiful than the myth that first brought us here. We began this journey with a whisper, a sailor's tale of a terrible sea monster born from our most primal fears. We called it the Kraken, and for a fleeting magical moment, we dared to ask, what if it was real? But our journey, we have discovered, was not a simple search for a monster. It was a pilgrimage into the very heart of the unknown, a gentle and thoughtful exploration of our own planet's most magnificent secrets. We began our descent by leaving behind the comfort of our terrestrial world, trading it for the quiet, unyielding power of the deep. We learned that the Kraken's home is not a quiet desert, but a dynamic, roiling tapestry of geological activity. A world where the Earth's core bleeds up into the water and new life is born in a chaotic embrace of chemistry and heat. We spoke of a concept called plate tectonics, of a slow, deliberate dance that has been going on for billions of years, and we imagined a creature whose very being was a testament to that silent, powerful rhythm. We then moved on to the incredible biology that would be required to exist in such a world where immense pressure and profound darkness are not obstacles, but the very crucible of life itself. We learned of deep-sea gigantism and incredibly slow metabolic rates. And we imagined a kraken whose body was a living submarine, its flesh a yielding fluid masterpiece of evolutionary engineering. Its heart would be a slow, patient drumbeat that echoed the pulse of the planet, its arms a magnificent thinking network of pure will. We then began to move from the physical to the ethereal, exploring how this creature would interact with its world. We found that in the deep, where there is no light, life has invented its own. We spoke of bioluminescence, of a language of silent, shimmering patterns, a conversation carried on in the hushed tones of the abyss. We imagined a kraken that could paint illusions on the canvas of the dark, a silent poet that told stories with light and shadow. But we also discovered that the deep is not a silent place. It is a vast, resonant concert hall where sound travels for thousands of miles. We spoke of deep-sea acoustics and the strange properties of the SOFAR channel, and we dared to wonder if the kraken's voice was a part of the Earth's natural hum, a whisper so deep that we have mistaken it for geology. We imagined its voice as a kind of magnificent living seismograph, a tool for communication and for navigation, a silent, powerful song that is a part of the planet's very pulse. Then we turned to the most profound mystery of all, the mind that would command such a magnificent being. We found that the kraken's intelligence, if it were real, would not be like our own. It would be a kind of distributed intelligence, a beautiful and ancient network of thought and sensation that stretches across its entire colossal body. We imagined its mind as a kind of living atlas, a map of the abyss that is constantly being updated and refined, and a kind of collective wisdom passed down, not in stories, but in the very structure of its being. We spoke of a mind that experiences time differently, a slow, patient rhythm that is attuned to the long, magnificent cycles of the deep. And in this contemplation, we found a profound and humbling truth. We realized that our very act of observation, our clumsy attempts to see and to understand, might change the thing we are looking at. We spoke of the observer effect in quantum mechanics, and we wondered if the kraken was a kind of beautiful paradox, a creature that only exists as a myth until we, with our terrestrial biases, force it into a single understandable reality. We then return to the world of life and death, of predator and prey. We reimagined the kraken not as a violent monster, but as a silent, patient hunter, a master of a beautiful and terrifying dance. We spoke of trophic cascades and the kraken's place in the unseen battle for the seas, a magnificent and powerful architect of an ecosystem that it holds in a delicate, balanced state. We discovered that a kraken's existence would not simply be a biological fact. It would be a new kind of law, a magnificent and quiet force that governs the lives and deaths of every creature in its domain. And we, with our tiny submersibles, had a fleeting glimpse of this silent kingdom, a moment of profound awe and existential terror that we called the sublime. We felt the kraken's presence not as a threat, but as a magnificent living reminder of our own smallness. We considered the kraken as a creature of second genesis, a magnificent and independent branch of life that began in the fiery heart of our planet, a creature that is so alien and so magnificent that it forces us to reconsider the very nature of life itself. And finally, we returned to our myth, to the collective unconscious, and we realized that the kraken as a scientific reality would not be the death of a myth, but the beginning of a new one, a more humble and more magnificent story about our place in a universe that is far more mysterious, far more beautiful, and far more terrifying than we have ever dared to imagine. And so we have reached the end. The journey is over. The myth has become a memory, and the dream of the kraken has gently brushed past us, a magnificent shadow in the night. The time has come for us to return, to let go of the deep and its mysteries, and to slowly, gently drift back to the surface. It is time to let the grand, magnificent hum of the abyss slowly fade, to let the images of the kraken's silent hunt and its patient ancient mind dissolve into a soft, comforting darkness. The air around you, which has carried my voice this entire time, is a soft and gentle thing. It is not the crushing, unyielding weight of the deep ocean, but a whisper, a silent, comforting presence. You have traveled a great distance with me tonight, a journey into the dark and the beautiful. But now it is time for the journey to end. I'd like to gently ask one last time, where is the place you're staying now? The time in that place, at this very moment, how is it flowing? Let go of the paradoxes. Let go of the pressure. Let the vast, magnificent dream of the Kraken slowly, quietly fade into a soft and comforting darkness. Remember that the world, even the parts that we have yet to discover, is a place of endless mystery and wonder. And remember that the most beautiful truths are often the ones that have been waiting for us all along. Before you go, and only if you wish to take a moment to leave a comment with your thoughts on our journey. But for now, let the gentle current of sleep carry you away. Sleep well, my companion. Wherever and whenever you are, sweet dreams.